real quick before we get into the Browns preseason opener, I have a huge announcement for you guys. You might have saw this on my Twitter. You might have saw this on my Instagram. And real quick reminder, please follow me on those things. But I have merch now. Yes, I finally designed some merch. For those of you who are huge fans of this channel, you will get kind of the inside jokes. So here's the picture of the merch. Yes. Ask me if I'm from Cleveland. I know some of you just hate how I say that word, but you know, it just rolls off the tongue so smooth. I think that's the perfect way to say the word. Axe. If you like the designs, if you think the shirt's funny, please, it would make me happy. And it would do a lot for this show if you could go ahead and support me and buy this merch. And in honor of Baker Mayfield, shotgunning that beer at the Indians game like a boss, please use the promo code SHOTGUN at checkout and you will get 6% off on your purchase. Yes, 6, because Baker wears 6 and because I'm that transparent. But please, if you're interested, check it out. Buy the merch. I would appreciate it a lot. And if you do, once it comes in, take a picture of yourself in it, send it to me. I would love to see that. That would make me so happy. But without further ado, let's jump into the video. What is up, guys? Quincy Carey here, and a lot to talk about today. Of course, we're going to talk about what happened at last night's Browns preseason opener against the Washington Redskins. And also, we have a Duke Johnson trade to talk about. A lot of things to get in, so let's get it in. If you didn't watch the game, let me give you the Cliff Notes. Browns look good. On defense, Browns look good. On offense, Browns look good. Now, they look good. And take this with a relative grain of salt because this is the preseason. You know, it's not real football. You know, everybody's going to say that to try to dampen our expectations. But, you know, it is the preseason. And it was against the Washington Redskins, who quite honestly did not look like they were going to be world beaters this season. So, again, take that with what it was. But when the Browns' first team was out there, and really not their first team, just Baker Mayfield, the first team offensive line, and he really had the second team wide receivers because Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham did not take any snaps today. They started Jalen Strong, Derek Willis, and Rashard Higgins. And Rashard Higgins was a huge story today. But with those three wide receivers, plus David Njoku and Nick Chubb, Baker Mayfield was able to surgically slice down the field almost perfectly and score a pretty impressive touchdown pass to Rashard Hollywood Higgins. Looked great. Baker looked like he was building off of what he did last year, very accurate. And he also seemed to take less bad chances with the ball and check the ball down when it was smart to check it down. You saw him dump it off on a little 5-yard shot to Jalen Strong that he took for like about 10, 15 yards. You know, just Baker making more smart decisions while also being able to thread the needle like he did to Rashard Higgins. So all good stuff there from the first team offense. And the first team offensive line looked pretty good too. Didn't really allow any pressures. But again, the Browns were running a 2-minute drill. I doubt the Redskins were expecting that. And again, it's preseason, vanilla defenses, and I don't think the Redskins are going to be world beaters this year. But let's look at some of the stats for the Browns. Of course, you had Baker Mayfield went 5 for 6, 77 yards, and had a 158.3 quarterback rating. That's almost perfect. Then you have a guy like Dontrell Hilliard, who's going to be more important because of the Duke Johnson trade, and we'll talk about that later. Didn't look great running the ball. Had 9 rushing attempts for 19 yards on a 2.1 per carry average. But he did look a lot better as a receiver, filling that Duke Johnson role, having 3 receptions for 34 yards. So it looks like he's going to be able to be that third down back, that Duke Johnson role that we're missing. Hopefully the Browns are going to be able to depend on Nick Chubb in obvious run situations, and they can go to Dontrell Hilliard. And then hopefully also when Kareem Hunt comes back, he will also be able to help in that way. Now the receivers, Rashard Higgins had a huge day. Boy, man, I don't know if it's just Rashard Higgins. He had an attitude switch, but it also coincides with when this team brought in Adam Henry. And you can just see how different he was. He is much different than the guy who got cut from this team as a rookie. He is a very, very skilled, very good, and very tough and stingy route runner. He is physical. He is he's just really good. I love Higgins out there, and he had a great game. 5 receptions, 98 yards, 19.6 per reception. Had a touchdown, should have had 2. Came this close to getting a second touchdown, but wasn't able to knock down the pylon. But looked really good out there. Jalen Strong, also a guy, no pun intended, looked pretty strong out there. Big guy, good speed, was able to catch some underneath throws from Baker Mayfield and take them for pretty good lengths. Looked really solid. Looked like a guy who's definitely going to make this team, but also be a factor on this team. Which is crazy because they still have Odell Beckham and Jarvis Landry to factor in. This wide receiving group is very, very deep. And then we got a guy who many think has been lost in the shuffle, kind of has disappointed because he had a lot of expectations coming into this camp. Antonio Callaway, who had a solid day, 3 receptions, 42 yards, 14 per. Had a solid day. Looks like he's improving. There's so much talent on this wide receiving core that, it's going to be hard for him to find his place. So he's been running with the 2s. And I think he can overtake Derek Willis where he's at in the depth chart. But I don't know if he's going to be able to take Jalen Strong because the Browns are going to want somebody with that size and physicality on that core because they don't have a lot of that in this receiving core. But those guys all look good. This Browns offense looks legit. And it's even crazier that I say that because, again, Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham, arguably this team, other than Baker Mayfield or Nick Chubb, this team's best 2 offensive pieces did not play at all. Baker Mayfield looked surgical out there. He looked really strong. He looked like he was continuing where he was last year. Everything looks good on the offense. Now let's talk about this defense for a little bit. Myles Garrett, he's going to be a problem. He's going to be very hard to block, look very explosive. At one point, he got such a clean, fast jump on the offensive line. He was at the offensive lineman's chest before the guy even had a chance to get his feet set to do his drop. Just ridiculous stuff we're seeing out of Myles Garrett. And if he stays healthy the entire year, I see no reason why he can't become a 20-sack guy and really be a strong contender for Defensive Player of the Year. And again, that is scary for a team that has this much on offense. Also, the first team secondary looked really good. Denzel Ward did not play in this game. They started Terrence Mitchell and Greedy Williams, and they did a good job when they were with the first team unit, and even a solid job when they weren't with the first team unit. Greedy Williams did have a play where he miscommunicated. He didn't know his responsibility on a certain coverage or just forgot and let a guy run right past him. But other than that, Greedy looked solid. He was able to get in the box and tackle, made a couple of really good tackles. I believe he even had a tackle for loss. So that was his biggest knock coming out of LSU, that he was not a willing tackler. That's why he fell all the way to the Browns. And if that's the reason truly why Greedy Williams fell all the way to the Browns in the second round, then the Browns definitely got a steal because coverage-wise, he looks good. He was a willing and able tackler in the box. He got in there, made some tackles for loss, did not look afraid at all, tackled pretty good, actually. I didn't think he looked like a bad tackling corner at all. If that was the biggest knock on Greedy Williams, and that's truly the reason that he fell, then boy, the Browns really did get a real steal with Greedy Williams because he looked really good out there today, other than that one mistake he made with Sheldrick Redwine, not knowing where he was supposed to be. But that's a rookie mistake. That's something you expect in the first preseason game. Mack Wilson continued to look good. He is developing. I think I got a little bit overzealous by saying he could overtake Christian Kirksey this year. I think he's going to get some snaps in. I think he's going to be able to contribute this year. But I think Mack Wilson still has a little bit of a ways to go. And you can definitely tell that because he's still not ahead of Ray Armstrong in the linebacking depth chart. They put Sione Takitaki out there with Ray Armstrong when they put out the first grouping of second-team guys. But Mack Wilson is improving. He has an eye for the ball. He is very athletic. He can cover tight ends. I feel like there's a little bit more seasoning they need to put on Mack Wilson before he's ready to play first-team reps. But once he's able to do that, Mack Wilson could be a Pro Bowl level linebacker once he develops. I see that in him. He really has the instincts and the ball skills to really create an impact at that linebacker position like most aren't. Now, Joe Schobert didn't play today, I don't believe. I think Sione Takitaki got to start next to Christian Kirksey, and that's the next guy. Sione Takitaki, boy, did he look impressive. Explosive, firing to the ball, always next to the play. Sione Takitaki has looked so good that it actually makes me wonder about what are they going to do with Jannard Avery, because I don't think he's going to take Sione Takitaki's spot in the last 3 weeks of camp. And I think Sione is going to be able to compete and possibly switch out with Christian Kirksey out there, because Sione can rush the passer. He was a former defensive end in college, I believe. And that's where it becomes weird with Jannard Avery, because Jannard Avery was kind of that hybrid linebacker / pass rusher guy. And it looks like Sione Takitaki has taken that spot down. So I would be interested to see what the Browns coaching staff does with Jannard Avery once he comes back. Will they try to play him more as a linebacker? Will they play more 4-3 traditional instead of the 4-2-5? Or will they use him as an extra pass rusher exclusively as a end in a 4-3? And I really am curious to see what they do with him, because Jannard Avery is too skilled and too good to just not use him. But it seems like it's inevitable that Sione Takitaki is going to get playing time with the ones this season, because it just looks like that's where he's at. So that's going to be a very interesting thing to watch in the next few weeks, presumably when Jannard Avery comes back. Now, another thing I noticed, it looks like the defensive line has some good depth, especially in that second unit. Trevon Coley looks like he is stepping up from what he was last year and returning to what he was that first year with the Browns, where he really did make more of an impact than he did last year, was able to penetrate, was able to get in the backfield, was able to make plays back there. And that's what we've wanted from Trevon Coley. Remember, he was a solid starter at the start of last year. It was just until the end of last year we saw his flaws and he just wasn't able to play at the level that we thought he was capable of. But he looks more capable of playing at that level right now. So that's very good. And they have other guys who are flashing in this defensive line. Last year's third-round pick, Chad Thomas, Major9 on Twitter, he looks like he is ready to actually contribute to this defensive line. Actually made a play. And then I know, Chad Thomas is a third-round pick. Making a play should not be the bar for him. But he didn't make a play all camp last year, all season last year. Finally breaking through, finally looking like he's that third-round pick, finally looking like he's going to be a factor on that defensive line. Chris Smith, I think Chris Smith is one of the most underrated players on this defense as it pertains to depth players, because Chris Smith is such a solid backup pass rusher. He's been able to get pressure. He's been able to hold it down when guys like Myles Garrett or Olivier Vernon have to take a breather. Chris Smith is just a really solid depth piece that the Browns have, and it's great that they have him, and that's why I'm also interested to see what they do with Jannard Avery, because he could possibly add that to the other side of the defensive line if he's able to play as a 4-3 and full-time. But that's pretty much it for the first week of the preseason. But Browns look good. They look like they have good depth. They look like they're strong in the areas that we thought they were strong at, and I think this is important. Not because they look good in one preseason game, but this is a continuation of about 2 weeks of good camps. They've had about 10 days, 10 practices, I believe, all padded. They've looked good in those practices. The things that have looked good in those practices translated to this preseason game. This team looks like they're consistent. They look like they're growing, and they look like they are who we think they might be up to this point. So that is why there's reason to get excited about what you saw in this preseason game. Now, next week is going to be very interesting to have the joint practice with the Indianapolis Colts. So that's going to be interesting to see. I'm going to look forward to seeing the highlights from that. And also, they play the Indianapolis Colts in the preseason week 2, and I believe they're going to play with much more of the starters since they don't have that joint practice the next week, and they have to prepare like a game next week since that's a dress rehearsal. So you're going to see Odell, you're going to see Jarvis, and you're going to see much more of what this team has to offer. But what we've seen so far looks very encouraging, looks very impressive. Now let's talk about this Duke Johnson trade for just 1 second. Duke Johnson was traded for reportedly much more than I thought they could ever get out of Duke Johnson. I am surprised they were able to get this out of Duke Johnson, and I have to applaud John Dorsey for his tactic. He held out for what he wanted, and he got it. I was critical of that And you know what? If I were the GM, I would have made a bad decision and traded Duke Johnson for nothing when they could have got apparently a 4th round or 3rd round pick, depending on if Duke Johnson plays 10 or more games. And Duke Johnson's probably going to play 10 games for the Houston Texans. So all around, good move, good maneuvering by John Dorsey. Again, John Dorsey proving every day that he knows more about football than me, and I am proud to admit that. But yeah, John Dorsey able to get a great draft pick out of that. I think that's a win-win for both sides. Duke Johnson gets to go to a team where he can be on their camp on his last year of his deal and really get used to that team and really become a factor on that team and put himself in the best position to hit the market next year or to get an extension. And the Browns were able to recoup more than likely their 3rd round pick they spent. Well, not this regime, but another regime spent on Duke Johnson, and be able to move forward without having to worry about having a player who doesn't want to be there. So I think all in all, both sides got what they want. Both sides should be happy, and I think John Dorsey did a great job. And I think Duke Johnson, and I wish Duke Johnson the best, and I think Duke Johnson got what he wanted. So win-win. Nobody loses. That's a great thing. But that's my thoughts on week 1 of the Browns preseason. And let me know what you thought about the Browns preseason opener in the comment section down below. And if you like this video or you like my face, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and ding that notification bell so you can be notified when I upload. And I'm going to upload a lot, and you're not going to want to miss it. Also, if you have a buck or two to spare, please consider going to my Patreon. And signing up for that, not only do you get your name at the bottom of this ticker, but if you hurry up and sign within the next few days, you can become a part of the exclusive Patreon only Worst Take Fantasy Football League, where you can beat me and talk all kind of garbage about it, because I suck at fantasy football. But I'm gonna try to compete. But that is it for this week's episode. Thank you guys for watching. Have a great day. Have a good night.